On today's episode of Chicago Bears Now, did head coach Matt Eberflus hint at Luke Getsy being gone after this season? Plus, who could be some top offensive coordinator candidates for next season if that is indeed the case? We're going to dive into all that and more here in just a few moments. But first, round of applause to Bears Now subscribers. You guys just keep showing up. 82,000 subs on the channel. We're getting closer and closer, brick by brick, to 100,000 subscribers. I can't express my gratitude enough. I appreciate it. If you are a new subscriber here, turn on that notification bell, select all, that way you never miss a video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I would encourage you to do so that way you never miss any of our free content on a daily basis. Hit the sub button, turn on the notification bell. I would greatly appreciate it. I appreciate the 82,000 and counting. Okay, is Luke Getsy on his way out of the door after this season? I kind of found this interesting at Matt Eberflus' press conference earlier today. Didn't really give a direct answer when he was asked how he feels Luke Getsy has done this year in terms of him being the offensive coordinator of this football team. And here's what he had to say. He added a little bit more, but this was kind of the nuts and bolts of it. He said, "I love Luke. He's a great leader. Like I said, I'll evaluate everything at the end." Talk about at the end of the season. If you go listen to that answer, and I encourage you guys to do so, it's around the 8-minute mark, I believe, at his press conference today. Bears Twitter tweeted it out, so go check it out. It didn't sound convincing to me. Now, as we've talked about all year, Matt Eberflus isn't great at press conferences, so I could be reading a little more into this than I should, but he kind of didn't answer the question, and when you don't answer the question, it makes me wonder, why are you doing that? Like, he was asked, how would you evaluate him as an offensive coordinator, and he said, "I love Luke. I love him as a leader." Well, that's not really answering the question, right? Like, that's dancing around the question. And look, Flus may have some frustrations that I think a lot of us have with Luke Getsy. Number one, he's very stubborn. Couple of examples of that. The Minnesota game. Lots of horizontal plays, which, again, I think that as a plan A makes some sense against a heavy blitz team, but once teams adjust, because good teams do, what is your plan B? Well, that's where bullet point number 2 comes into play, the inability to counter adjust. And that kind of ties into number 3. It kind of feels like he's guessing. And look, you don't always have the perfect play call for every play and for every situation. Sometimes you're wrong, but I get the sense sometimes that he's just picking a play and there's not really a lot of rhyme or reason to it. A good example, when the Browns tied the game at 17 and he goes to toss crack and you lose 5 yards on that first play. That's a play he likes to run, but there's not a lot of logic to running it there because that play hadn't worked all day against the Browns. I get it. That's a play that does have success for this team, but it didn't in that game. So it kind of just feels like he's just guessing, like, hey, I'm just going to run this and we're just going to hope it works. That you can't be that way as a coordinator and as a play caller. And we've talked about his inconsistent usage of Justin Fields. Sometimes he does things that make sense. Other times he doesn't. My conclusion is I wouldn't bring him back. Like, I don't think he's this horrible coach. Like, I think his game planning is decent. I think his plan A's are usually good. I just don't think he's a good on-the-fly play caller. You have to adapt. You have to adjust as defenses adjust to you. And we've seen almost 2 years of this and a very small sample size of him proving when he has been able to do that. I would not bring him back, and I wonder if Matt Eberflus is kind of saying without saying it that he hasn't been that pleased with the job he's done as well. Will Luke Getsy return in 2024? What do you guys think? Type Y for yes, or you can type in for no. I get the feeling that he's not. I think at minimum, something's going to have to change this offseason, and changing offensive coordinators feels like the bare minimum of what you're going to do. I guess the bare minimum could be just changing quarterbacks and bringing back the whole staff, but that's a tough sell to this fan base to just blame it all on Justin and bring back Flus, Getsy, and everyone else. I'm going to type my in for no. I do not think Luke Getsy will be back. So coming up, speaking of that, who are some top offensive coordinator candidates in this scenario where Matt Eberflus would stay as the head coach? I don't know what's going to happen with Flus, but that's how I wanted to approach it today. Top offensive coordinator candidates if Getsy is out of town. But before we get to that, Prize Picks. The holidays are here. They're offering daily holiday specials. You can get some juiced statistical plays here where you can make even more money than expected with Prize Picks. They give you some safer choices as well, or you could just play the standard, pick 2 to 6 players and go for more or less than their normal projections. I actually like the more on both quarterbacks this week, passing yards, and you might be saying, Chicago in December, Justin Fields coming off a 160-yard passing game, Kyler Murray just back from the injury. Yeah, it's going to be 55. Weather's going to be nice on Christmas Eve when the Bears take on the Cardinals, believe it or not. So I like them to both go more, and I know the Bears defense is playing well. Joe Flacco just threw for 374 on you, though, so it's not like they're not giving up yards. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use our code CLNS to get a deposit match up to $100. Put your money where your mouth is with Prize Picks today. 2 to 6 player entries. You will have a blast. Okay, let's get to some Getsy replacements if he is indeed gone. And if Eberflus remains as the head coach, and look, whether we like it or not, I do think that scenario is possible where Flus is back and where Getsy is gone. I wouldn't love it, but I do think it could happen. So let's play it that way. Eric Bieniemy. Here's a guy that I think is an interesting name. I think a month or two ago, there was a thought, well, maybe Eric Bieniemy will just replace Ron Rivera in Washington. Had the offense doing well. The Commanders' defense was kind of coming up short, new ownership. They might just promote him as their new head coach. The fact that they haven't even given him an opportunity as an interim makes me think that's unlikely. Washington's also been on a losing streak, so I think it's very possible that Bieniemy could miss out on becoming a head coach again in this coaching cycle, which would mean he would likely need to find a new home as an offensive coordinator. Josina Anderson a couple of weeks ago had this report saying that the Bears are expected to have interest in Eric Bieniemy with general knowledge that Matt Eberflus is under evaluation. Well, I think they could have interest in him whether they fire or keep Flus. If they keep him, obviously as an OC is. If they fire him, potentially as a head coaching candidate. Again, I'm not convinced Bieniemy is going to have a ton of head coach looks, so maybe if the Bears do keep Matt Eberflus, hiring Bieniemy as an OC could be a possibility. And remember, he worked with Patrick Mahomes very closely for several years. Whether you keep Justin Fields, a mobile quarterback, or Caleb Williams, who gets comped to Mahomes a lot, maybe that could be a fit that makes sense. Okay, next up, Frank Reich. This would kind of just be a role reversal, right? Matt Eberflus was Frank Reich's defensive coordinator in Indianapolis for a few years. In this scenario, it would flip around where Frank Reich would become his offensive coordinator and Flus be the head coach. We know they've had a working relationship in the past. Things didn't work for whatever reason in Carolina. Maybe it would work in this scenario where all he has to worry about is running an offense and calling plays. Could be an intriguing scenario if Flus does return. Now, what should the Bears do with Flus? I would probably fire him and try to upgrade here. I don't hate the guy. I think he deserves some credit for keeping the team together. I think the defense is absolutely improved. But you're not the defensive coordinator. You're the head coach. And I think you can upgrade here. But, again, this video is based on if he returns, who should they hire as OC. But I didn't want to bring the Flus question to the table. Do you want to fire him? Do you want to keep him? Let me know in the comments section. Another Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. Now, you could hire him because it would be considered an upward move because he doesn't call the plays for Miami. That is Mike McDaniel, their head coach. So you could bring in a guy who has worked under McDaniel to then come lead your offense and call plays. What's the risk there? Well, he hasn't been a play caller. So you've got to consider that as well. But I just really like what they've been able to do with Tua and kind of unlocking his talent. So whether it's with Justin Fields to try and get him to another level or whether it is with a rookie quarterback, I think bringing in a guy like this could make a lot of sense. I think it could also make sense for Ken Dorsey, who, look, I get it. The Bills have won some games since he's been out, but I still think when they made a change to fire him, they just had to do something, and he became their scapegoat. I don't think Ken Dorsey was like holding that team back necessarily. I just think the Bills were in a funk and they had to do something, and they weren't going to fire McDermott, and they're not going to change quarterbacks obviously from Josh Allen, so they had to make a move at OC. I think Ken Dorsey will be calling plays somewhere next year. Bills had some really good offenses under Ken Dorsey the past couple of seasons, so definitely open to that idea. How about Greg Roman? Now, I'm probably only on board with this idea if Justin Fields is the quarterback, because Roman's big shortcomings in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson is didn't always have great passing schemes and designs. But the running attack and using Lamar's running ability as a weapon, which Getsy hasn't done enough, in my opinion, with Fields, took off. It exploded. Like, that's really when Lamar was able to become an MVP type of player, because they just leaned into his talents. And look, maybe you get a passing game coordinator to help him out with the passing game side of it. But if you keep Fields, I think Roman is an intriguing name. If not, I'm probably not that interested, if I'm being honest. I want someone with more pass game design capability. But with Fields, I'm definitely open to it. Speaking of which, who will be the Bears quarterback in 2024? If you had to guess it, drop a name in the comments below. I've said it for months. It's going to be one of three players, in my opinion. Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, Drake May. I'd be surprised if it's someone else. Drop a name down in the comments below. Just a little rapid fire on some other candidates here. Kellen Moore, I definitely think his stock has fallen, but because of that, he should be available, right? Like, I think a lot of people thought he could be a head coach in this cycle. Well, Brandon Staley, his boss, got hired. I think it's somewhat notable that the Chargers didn't give Kellen an opportunity to be the interim head coach. I think that's pretty interesting, but I don't think he's going to be getting a head coaching job, and I think the Chargers are just going to do a complete reset. So kind of like Eric Bieniemy in Washington, he could be looking for a new place to call home. Kliff Kingsbury, former Cardinals head coach, he worked with the quarterbacks this year at USC. Caleb Williams, if you draft him, Kingsbury's worked with him for a year. I think that could be a fit that makes sense. He's a proven play caller in this league as well. Klint Kubiak, the son of Gary Kubiak, he's on that staff with San Francisco. He's actually their pass game coordinator. So, listen, you bring in assistance from a regime like that, I'm definitely intrigued. Gerard Johnson, the quarterback's coach in Houston, what he's done with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud is definitely appealing to me. And then Jim Bob Cooter, a guy who's kind of bounced around. He's had success. He kind of hit a wall, but now he's back working under Shane Steichen. I know it's Steichen's offense, but I've been pretty impressed with what that staff's been able to do to have that team at 8-6, have Gardner Minshew playing the way he is. So a guy with experience calling plays, a guy who's helped Indianapolis kind of overachieve at a very high level this year, whereas I would say the Bears have underachieved this year with equal or even more talent than the Colts, and yet they're 3 games worse. So those are some names, and listen, we don't know for sure what's going to happen. Is Flus going to get fired? Is Getsy? What's going to happen with Justin Fields? Those are all the questions that we want answers to. We're still going to have to wait a few weeks for at least some of those, but we're going to cover it all. So hit that subscribe button. Join us tomorrow. We'll be back for a video in the morning and for Bears Now Live tomorrow afternoon, 5 o'clock Eastern, 4 Central Time. We'll see you then. Bear down.